What's up, guys? Thank you so much for joining me again. We're in part 4 now of this. For those of you who are new, I have been editing a promo for Star Wars Mandalorian, and so far we've gone through the stages of a rough cut. Well, we've gone, stages of the sync cut, I should say, starting that, going through all the footage, pulling all the stuff, deciding what's good, and trying to fit a brief around that, and then executing that brief. And then in part 2 we had the we've finished off the sync cut, so got it sounding nice, got dialogue working all together now, and then we got the B-roll working and the music on, so it started to flesh it out. Then I made a massive mistake apparently, and I called one of the Star Wars characters by the wrong breed. I'm not a mega fan, so apologies to all the mega fans out there, and corrected that, did some more fine tuning to the edit, and got it looking really nice actually. And that's pretty much where we're up to now. So now we've got a finished edit, we've got a full timeline, lots of B-roll, music working really well, and we've got the sound levels all working really well across everything. So pretty good. We even set up a nice little position at the end here for some titles. So that brings us on to today. So today we're going to throw on some titles in Premiere and After Effects. So I'm going to be jumping between the two programs and show you the best workflow that I have found that gets you good results without causing crashes and all sorts of things. There are many ways to do the same thing, and you can do some stuff in Premiere that's easy to do, or you can go for a little bit more advanced in After Effects. It just gives you a little bit more extra, just a little bit of extra class, I guess, a little bit something extra. So I just want to point out before we start that I have made this entire Premiere project, the whole thing here, I've made this available to you. So if you want to download this project, you can do so. The link is in the description. Click on through, you'll find it there. You can download this actual Premiere Pro project, as well as all the links to download all of the assets, including the music that I've used in the final edit. So if you want to be able to see exactly how I have put this together and all the different stages, these different sequences are all the different stages I've made it, then go through, click on the link, and you can get access to the Premiere Pro project. Okay then, so let's start. First of all, let's watch the whole thing through, see where we're at, and see where might be a good spot to put some titles. I'm only thinking, because I don't want to go too far with this, I don't think it needs a great deal of stuff. I think we just need some names, and I think we need a title, and we need a call to action at the end. This is, after all, this is a video that is promoting the series, and in the brief at the beginning we decided that at the end of the video we wanted people to go check out the series, be it on Disney Plus or read more about it. So we need to give the viewers somewhere to go. So let's watch the edit from the top.
The Mandalorian is your iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner
who's been following a way of life and has that way of life upended by the introduction of the baby.
This little being is suddenly helping him and then challenging him.
The show, to me, in the most basic storyline, is about a man discovering something about himself that he had never known.
And realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
he's relatable. We're all kind of covered in our own armor, you know, and terrified of taking that armor off.
I think Star Wars is such a part of people's lives.
It was beyond being groundbreaking, Star Wars was. It was pretty phenomenal. Not only what it was at the time, but what it has become.
This new technology brings filmmaking back where it has been and where it should be. This is fantastic. Filmmaking back where it should be.
Cool. So there's a few, I would guess I was right with the initial estimation. We need titles for the interviewees, and then we need call to action at the end, probably a Disney Plus logo as well, and maybe the Mandalorian title somewhere. Figure that out in a second. Before I do anything, let's duplicate this sequence so we're not losing anything. And I'm going to get rid of all these other timelines. We don't need those. I thoroughly enjoy a nice clean working space. This is my window layout, my default one, which I love. So I've got the project window on the left, full height, just because when you end up getting loads and loads of stuff coming through, if you can drop down the bin, the list can be really long. And I find if it's in a window like this size, you're just endlessly scrolling. I don't need this timeline to be any wider than this, because I'm only working within a small area. So this works perfectly for me. Sometimes I might shrink this if I've got my second monitor playing this on full screen, and then I can perhaps have the effect controls here. I find this really works really well. Certainly through the latter stages of the edit, when you need to tweak certain things in edit controls, but otherwise this is my default view and I love it. So I'm going to go through and throw on some placeholders, some placeholder titles, and I'm going to do this in Premiere because this will firstly give us the exact time that we need each title to be, and it will also be quicker to create and position the titles within Premiere, and then we can take it into After Effects and everything will be in the right place and working nicely. So let's make sure these go on a fresh track, fresh video track, and I'm going to put his title, his name in the bottom right. What's his name? I've forgotten. I'm going to put Pedro P for now until I've sorted out this alignment. So make it right aligned. This type is terrible, this font. I don't really know what to use. In reality, you use whichever font, because this is a promo for whatever company it is. For example, this is promoting the TV series, right? But it could be on a news channel, or it could be on YouTube. YouTube actually made this to present it, or any company really. There's all sorts of ways of promoting it, and Disney would pay whoever to promote these sorts of things. So the actual font would normally be in the font of the company who is presenting this video, not necessarily in the Disney font or the Mandalorian font, but we are making this for an imaginary company, so it could literally be anything. Let's go for something simple. Let's try an extra bold and see how that works. It's a bit too comical. maybe Helvetica is a favourite of mine. It is a bit, some people think it's a bit bland, but I think it really has its place. Certainly when it comes to crisp modern things. I'm gonna, because I can't see the whole name, I don't know what it's going to look like, so while I'm here I'm going to find out this guy's name, and I know it is at the beginning if I hit F. Give me a second, I'm just going to turn on my keys so that you can see what I'm pushing. So if I hit F, I can bring up the original file in my source window, scrub back, I know his name's at the beginning, here, Pedro Pascal. There we go. Okay, so now let's look at the font again. I'm not keen on that now. Maybe there's something, I do like clean, I like the simpleness. I wonder if Roboto would work. Turns out I don't have it, so no. What else we got? Universe. Haven't selected it, have I? Let's look again. Universe. Eh. Do you know what about if we do Arial? I actually think the Arial looks fine, if I'm honest. Okay, let's shrink that down a bit. I might make it bold as well, so that the name underneath, their title is thinner, which is pretty typical really. Now you could make a separate graphic and have the name underneath, but what I tend to do is copy the text here, and then you can paste it, which is essentially duplicating it. Then move that down, and you know it's perfectly in line. So let's make that thinner, make the font smaller, and his title is, do you know what, I don't actually know the Mandalorian's name, so what I'm going to do is put the Mandalorian, but he does mention the Mandalorian's actual name, so I'm going to try and find it.
Oh, loner, gunslinger, that harkens to the best of the samurai movies and the westerns. And in talking to John, I asked him what should I be looking at. I know he loves movies. I love movies. What would you like me to watch? I asked him, and he immediately brought up Sergio Leone and Akira Kurosawa, Yojimbo, and the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. And so he's very samurai like Clint, and just went me into those two iconic characters because he's also what I love the opportunity.
Do you know what? I'm going to check the beginning. His character, 137. So let's try there. Although my time code's different to theirs, so let's try and do some maths. 547 we're at. So around about here. Yeah.
I remember getting a call from my agent saying that Jon Favreau wants to meet you regarding a Star Wars project, and so I immediately said, "Wait, I'm going to Jon Favreau. I had no idea what it was, whether it was a feature or a cereal box. I had no idea, and so I go and I meet John at his office, and he invites me into this room that is basically, corner to corner, covered in story illustrations of this project that he's working on, and there are all these incredible images of the Mandalorian character. Mandalorian, whose name is Din Djarin.
Din Djarin.
His name is Din Djarin.
Great. No, I don't know how to spell that. So let's do a search. Mandalorian's name. Character name. There we go. Din Djarin. Check I spelled that okay. Din Djarin. Yeah. Okay. Let's make it smaller because it stands out way too much. Select it. Shrink it. No, doesn't want to work. I hate it when it does this. You have to select it. Now shrink it. And then bring it up. How's that looking? A bit too close. It's not that sexy, is it? Let's look at some different font. Do you know what I might do? I might bring in the Mandalorian logo, see what it looks like and see what would work alongside it. So let's take a peek. I'm sure the Disney website has some pretty good sources. Here we go. Pretty cool visual. Right, let's take that and drop it into assets, artwork. Make a new, won't let me. Okay then. Assets, artwork, images. Mandalorian logo. Nope, still didn't work. Okay. Then I'll just take a screen grab. Cool. I always add the extension on if the computer takes it off, because otherwise it can tend to fuck things up. Sometimes After Effects or Premiere can't read it. Very rarely, but it does happen. So let's bring that in to Premiere. And then we can see what might work alongside, what font would suit. So let's change it on Pedro. Now it needs to be pretty easy to read. Let's see if Futura works. No, too modern. I do think a sans serif is a better idea. For those that don't know, a sans serif is, I should say a serif is one with these little bits at the end of the letters, little flicks, and then a sans serif is without. Sometimes there's just too many to choose from. Oh, thanks very much, Adobe, for taking me out of that. Did I try Avenir? That works. That looks better anyway. It'll do for now. Let's see if this works better, slightly thicker. Yeah, nice. Okay. Generally speaking, the so I call these lower thirds, these little names in the corner. They do have other names. I always forget how many there are. I'm sure you'll come across loads of different names for it. I'll try at some point in the future and write down all the different ways I've heard this called. But honestly, I've probably heard it 5 different names, and each time I'm like, what the hell is one of those? So call it whatever the fuck you want, really, but I call it lower thirds. I think that's a news term. I come from, started doing news and documentaries and that sort of thing, and so I think that's where that term comes from. Anyway, I'm gonna, there's a reason it's on this side. Generally speaking, it's good practice to put it on the opposite side of the speaker, unless you've got 2 people speaking at the same time, in which case you have it underneath them. And normally what happens is when a speaker is framed in the shot, they're looking across the empty space. This is true here. So he's looking to the right of the camera, and what the text does is it kind of fills the frame, so it gives it some nice symmetry. And let's try and find someone else. She's looking across through the empty space, so you put it here into the empty space, and it helps with the eye line as well. So she's looking over here and you're looking, it's yeah, just works. So I'm just going to tidy this up a bit. I think the top name can come up a bit. Whoops. Drag that back in here so I can have some more space to look at what I'm doing. So yeah, I'm going to drag the name up a bit. That looks good to me. And I'm going to give it some shadow, just because we've got white background there. Now, yes, it's easier to do these things in After Effects, but you can't see exactly how it's going to look on this unless you pull everything into After Effects, and I just find this a lot easier. So let's change the drop shadow. I'm going to, so that's 4. Do the same to the other one. So a bit drop shadow on there. Bring that down to 4. probably bring the opacity up. Yeah. So something like that. Doesn't look too bad. Now let's drag this out to the correct duration. If we watch it back, we can decide if we need to have the name disappear or if the shot is short enough to keep it on until the end of the shot.
Ironically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
It's a very short
Who's been
shot,
following.
so we want it on for as long as possible.
Lorian is your iconically cool, flawed, mysterious.
So what I'm going to do, because it's so short, I'm going to extend, shorten this shot.
Iconically.
And extend the name so that we can read his name better.
Mandalorian is your iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
And this is one of the good reasons you should do this in Premiere first before you make anything in After Effects. It's just easy to adjust these things right now.
Iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
Might give this an extra couple of frames.
Iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
Who's been following a way of life and
Yeah, that works for me. So what I'm wondering is whether actually this would look better with a background behind it, because it's not very legible. So I am going to do that, but I'm going to do that in After Effects. This definitely gives us some framing. We know how big it needs to be. And it gives us our timing. So now I'm holding down Alt and dragging this so I can duplicate it over here. And shorten it to fit. And now I'm going to fill out this interviewee's name. So this needs to be justified to the left. One thing I stupidly didn't do yet is turn on title safety. So let's drag those over. And make sure they're in title safe. Same for these guys. Bring it up here. A lot of people say it's not worth, you don't need to do this anymore because title safety was invented for 4:3 televisions where there was a sort of black border around the screen. And the black border changed from television to television, so you lose a section of the screen depending on what television you were watching, and we don't have those anymore. We're watching the same picture, but the thing is now, especially more so than ever, everyone's watching on a million different screen sizes and devices because everyone's watching it on their mobile phones, laptops and everything else. So the screen size, especially on mobile phones, if they are maximized, it cuts off some of the screen around it depending on the size of your screen. So it's still a good idea to keep title safety in mind, which I thankfully managed to do in time before I had to change everything. So let's change this person's name. I can't remember her name, but it's going to be in the footage. So let's take a look. Deborah Chow. Deborah She's the director of episodes 3 and 7.
Life, and has that way of life upended.
Let's give it a bit more time.
A way of life, and
Just give it a few frames earlier. And at the end as well, I think.
has that way of life upended. Life, and has that way of life upended by the introduction of the baby.
This little being is suddenly helping him and then challenging him.
The sh-
Alright, let's get Dave's name on there. So we need it to be in the bottom left, just like Deborah. So hold down Alt, drag that, duplicate it. Let's find him in here so I know how to spell his name. No. Dave Filoni. Oh, well, that works perfectly. Doesn't want to play nice. Weird. Well, that's perfect.
And then challenge.
Okay, Dave Filoni. Exec. Executive producer. / director. Episodes 1 and 5.
And then challenging him.
The show to me in the most
Not very long at all on him.
Being is suddenly helping him. And then
Let's drag that back. Add some time in here.
suddenly helping him. And then challenging him.
the show to me in the most basic.
This little being is suddenly helping him. And then
So let's shift this back a few frames, add a bit more here.
little being is suddenly helping him. And then challenging him.
The show to me in the most basic storyline is about a man discovering
We've already seen her, so we don't need to see her again.
something about himself that he had never known.
And realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was.
So we need a name in the bottom right. Copy across Pedro's.
Search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
And now, I don't actually think that the video shows his name. Yeah, it's quite bizarre.
Reference that John's given us throughout the show.
So I am going to have a look on the internet to find out what this guy's name is. I know his character's name is Grief, because he says that in the interview. Grief, Mandalorian actor. That's him. Carl Weathers. Copy that name. And his character's name. I'm going to put the characters' names in inverted commas, just because it kind of makes a bit more sense for people who are reading it and also reading executive producers. You know, because this guy doesn't play the executive producer role. So it just should help give a bit of clarity. And I'll do it here as well. I'm going to change. No, I think AKA makes sense, doesn't it? I was going to put a / instead. Cool. Just make sure that's on screen for long enough.
Realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
He's relatable.
Yeah, it's pretty much on the same length as everyone else. We've seen his name. We need one in the bottom left. Okay. This is Werner Herzog, isn't it? But I don't know his character's name. So let's have a look. Is it going to give us the name? Ah, client. Yeah, just client. Okay, well, I'm going to copy his name over here so I don't spell it wrong.
Where it has been and where it should be.
Maybe that needs to be on for a touch longer.
Technology brings filmmaking back where it has been and where it should be.
That's going to have to be from the beginning. So let's push that back. That's going to be 5 frames, I believe.
She brings filmmaking back where it has been and where it should be.
Yeah, that works. And then save that. All we have left now is the end. Now I'm going to go to back to the Disney Plus page and see what we've got here. Now we've got the official trailer here. So I'm going to take a look at that and see what what sort of graphics and stuff they got on this. So they've got the Lucasfilm logo here. And then quiet. Okay, that's pretty cool, but I don't know where I'm going to get this Disney Plus animation. So what I'm going to do, just watch that end bit again to see what animation they did on that. Maybe I'll recreate something similar. Probably do it without the what you've got is a sheet or a curtain being pulled back, and then you've got a glare in the middle there, like a lens flare, flashes, and that's it. That's all that transition is. And then a scale. Everything is coming closer, scaling up. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this big, and I'm going to open QuickTime and record this. I won't make it big because it's hiding everything. Plus the file size will be enormous because you've got like a nearly 3000 pixel wide screen here. So let's start recording this. Cool. I'm going to trim this in QuickTime just because I can. There's no point in saving the bits I don't need. So let's come in at here. And I don't need that bit at the end. Trim. Right, save that. And that's going in. Where should I put it? I'm going to put it into assets. I tend to keep footage, the only stuff I tend to keep in the footage folder is actual footage that has been shot, or stock footage, or conversions of those things. So things that I got from external, this essentially is a screen recording, and it should fit in the logos folder. So I'm going to put it in here, call it Disney Plus logo. .mop. Save that puppy. And let's get in this Mandalorian logo I pulled from earlier, and just as a placeholder so I can get some timings. I'm going to have this fade up, so I'm going to try and recreate this, the simple animation that we just showed in the actual, come on. I'm going to try and recreate this, but without the cloth. You can hardly even see this cloth being pulled. So what I'm going to do is just have it kind of like a wipe on in a similar fashion. So I'm going to keep that for the whole duration, and then let's bring in that Disney Plus logo we just saved. Throw it on the end, minus that animation. Okay, I'm going to hit Q and delete that. And I don't need to see the transparency grid, so I'm going to turn that off by going to the spanner here and turn it off, transparency grid. Now, I have no issues with the black bars top and bottom because some of the footage of the actual series has got black bars like that, so it I don't think it stands out too much. If I had the original files, I probably would scale it up to get rid of the black bars, but I don't, so it'll do. So let's look at this transition here. Let's try and figure out these timings to bring in this logo.
Back where it should be.
I'm just going to put on a basic fade transition, cross dissolve, and that's with Shift D. And I'm going to drag it so that it comes in at the time I want it to come in. It's a bit quick. I'm going to bring it in earlier and let it fade on for longer.
Where it should be.
I'll play with that fade amount in After Effects. And what I'm going to do is also cut out this this image, because at the moment it's just a black background. If you can see here, it's just black. And obviously underneath that we have the star background. So that's what we want to see through. Okay, so let's watch it back and you can see the bits that we're going to create in After Effects now.
The Mandalorian is your iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner
who's been following a way of life and has that way of life upended by the introduction of the baby.
This little being is suddenly helping him and then challenging him.
The show, to me, in the most basic storyline, is about a man discovering something about himself that he had never known.
And realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
He's relatable. We're all kind of covered in our own armor, you know, and terrified of taking that armor off.
I think Star Wars is such a part of people's lives.
It was beyond being groundbreaking, Star Wars was. It was pretty phenomenal. Not only what it was at the time, but what it has become.
This new technology brings filmmaking back where it has been and where it should be. This is fantastic. Filmmaking back where it should be.
And maybe because we've got this Disney Plus logo at the end now, we've got a bit of space for some extra music. Let's see what's hiding once this music finishes. Yeah, it works. Let's drag out and see what it sounds like here.
Where it should be.
Very nice. Okay, so one thing worth noting before we go into After Effects is this, well, every single title that we have, every single lower third we have is pretty short, and the options for extending those are slim. The way the edit works, it wouldn't flow as nicely if we had much longer on these. This one in particular can't be extended anymore. We can't get rid of the shot because we have a cut. We have an edit point here. So we're going to see a jump cut, which we don't want. So it's important, unless the producer comes along and tells me otherwise, that we need to have them longer and get rid of these shots, then it's important that we don't create anything with where it takes ages for this name to come on. Because if it takes ages, if it takes even half a second, it's going to be quite, it's going to take you out of, let's have a look. So this is 2.5 seconds, no, nearly 3 seconds. So if you took away half a second from that, you're essentially taking away, what's that, like 15%? Which is quite a lot. And certainly when it comes to reading long titles like this, it's going to make a massive difference. So whatever we do in After Effects, I would like to bring attention to their names somehow. So whatever we do, we need to make sure it's not too elaborate. It's got to be very simple, and we need to be able to read their names immediately. So now that we have this timeline in Premiere, let's bring some of it into After Effects. So I already have an After Effects project here, completely blank, ready to go. And that's one thing that is important when you do what we're about to do, which is right click the item and then go to replace with After Effects composition. It's important to know, it's important to have an After Effects project open already. Why is that? Well, because if you don't, it's going to create a brand new project, a completely empty project with nothing in it, and it'll start it from scratch, bring in the assets that you tell it to. Of course, in this position, that wouldn't be so bad, but if you are opening a project that you've worked on perhaps yesterday, and After Effects is closed, and you want to continue, say half of these have been already been done in After Effects, and After Effects is closed, you want to work on this one. If you hit right click, replace with After Effects composition, that's going to open a brand new project in After Effects with nothing in it. So you'll then have to try and figure out how to get all of those assets over into the After Effects project that you've already created, which is hassle. So make sure you got your After Effects project open, the one that you want to bring everything from Premiere into, and then right click, replace with After Effects composition. Now that's pretty quick. We didn't bring any footage in. We can, if we wanted to, bring the footage in as well, so that we can see how the titles look against the footage. And I'm actually going to do that, so I'm going to undo this in After Effects, and obviously it's going to say media offline because that doesn't exist anymore. Undo it in here. The only trouble with this is that if I have this title that's this long, and we know this is exactly how long we want the title to be, and I select the footage underneath and it's a different duration, what After Effects is going to do is it's going to create a composition that is the length of the entirety of your selection. So it's going to start here and finish here. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Certainly if you've got fades or anything that passes over an edit point, but to make our lives easier, and because we're working pretty strictly with the times, what I'm going to do is add a cut point here that matches the title that we've created here. So now that these two pieces of footage are exactly the same duration. Now, if I bring that into After Effects, we have the exact duration of how we want our title to be. Now we need to do some cleanup. So this is by far and away the easiest way to get started with making titles in After Effects. Making everything in Premiere, the text tool's very quick in there, getting everything to scale, positioning everything, and then bringing in only exactly what you need into After Effects and nothing more. It's a really efficient way of doing it. But now we need to do some cleanup. So, first things first, go back to Premiere. And this is really important. Yes, now we have this dynamic linked project. So any changes whatsoever I make in After Effects. For example, if I want to turn off the footage, any effects that happen in here will immediately be reflected in Premiere, which is fantastic if it worked. The problem is it's super buggy. It crashes, it bogs down your machine. If you want to play back, you'll end up getting stuttering and stuff. You have to render the whole timeline just to watch it back, and it doesn't make things efficient whatsoever. So what I tend to do is undo in Premiere. As soon as I've pulled everything into After Effects, I undo it in here. That gets rid of the dynamic link, but I have everything in After Effects all nice. Now for me, that's one of the most important steps when it comes to working in between Premiere and After Effects. Now that we have that, we can build our title. So I'm going to go into this. The way that After Effects packages the Premiere stuff is obviously different to how you would do it normally in After Effects. So it creates pre-comps, and so we don't want those because we want full functionality of this. We're adding extra layers. So a pre-comp is much like nesting in Premiere. We don't need loads and loads of nests. So I've just cut those out, and I'm just going to paste them back into the master sequence, the master composition, and I'm going to delete this because this is where they came from, but we don't need it anymore. It looks exactly the same, but we have all the functionality to be able to edit these inside the master sequence. I'm going to turn off the transparency grid so I can actually see what we're looking at. And now we need to do a bit of tidy up in the project window. So let's make a new folder. We'll call this compositions, and another one which is footage, and bring in, so this composition here we have is this one here, so let's bring that into compositions. This is the one that we deleted from here, the pre-comp that it automatically made, which we don't need because it's empty, see? So we're going to delete that, and then the footage, we'll drag into footage. Now let's rename this composition. So let's call it by the name of the guy, Pedro lower third, and I'm going to call it AE01 because it's made in After Effects and this is version 1, and there might be more versions. Okay, so now we have a nice tidy project ready to go. It's not doing anything, but we have the exact duration we need, we have everything in the right position, and it makes our life a lot easier. If we want to turn this footage back on, we can see what we're doing with. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do is just put a little simple box behind this, and then have the box fade up, or maybe the I'm trying to think of how we can do it, like I said, so that the text is immediately legible. yeah, what I'm going to do is, because we read it left to right, it's possible to have the first word already on, and then we write the rest of them in, rather than starting from absolutely nothing on screen and then bringing everything in, if that makes sense. So we've already got the first word, and then by the time we've read the first word, the second word is revealed and ready to read. So that should buy us some time. How should we do that? Let's take some inspiration from the Disney Plus website and the logo reveal that we saw, where the let's go find it, where the logo had the cloth sort of taken away. So we're going to kind of mimic that, and what we're going to do is just going to create a straight line and then fade it across. So we're going to have a box behind it as well, just to make things easier to read. And maybe I'll change the colour to match something similar to the logo, this kind of orangey yellow sunset colour. A lot of the titles I noticed in the trailer were this colour, so I might take that. Okay, so let's create a black, I think, a black box for the name to sit in. Easiest way to do that is pick the rectangle tool, and you have to make sure that you don't have anything selected whatsoever. If you have footage selected, for example, what it's going to do is it's going to create a mask for that footage. We don't want to do that, so we need to make sure everything is deselected, and we're going to drag it in from behind, something like that. Drag it to the bottom so that it's underneath the text, so we can see what we're doing, and then play with these settings. I don't think we want a stroke, and then I think the fill should be black. And I'm going to change the size of that, so I'm double clicking and changing it. What that does is change the size of the actual shape, whereas if you don't double click, it changes the size relative to the anchor point right here in the center of the layer, whereas we don't want to work with the whole layer, we just want to work with this one shape. So double click it and you can change that. Now, do you know what? Now I'm thinking, because it's the reason that I had the white text so big, I suppose it's legible. But now that we've got this big black box around it, it's very legible, and I don't think we need it so big. This box is massive, it's taking up most of the screen. So let's shrink the text down. $75. That'll do. Shrink this one down as well. Okay. Now that works. Let's just shift this shape. I'm going to shrink it ever so slightly. Okay. Now what I'd love to do is sort of bring this on from the side, like that. But we don't really have a lot of time to play with. So I'm going to try and play with the have the text wipe on and see how that feels. There's loads of ways we can do this. We could mask each individual text item. So we've got the top name and the bottom text strap. So we could animate a mask on each of those, and or we could create one over both of them. If I was going to make one over both of them, I think what I do is duplicate this shape layer and then just have it over the top, and then animate the position. So I've hit P, start here, move a few frames forward, and then move this over here, and hey presto, we have a very simple wipe. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to do it per line. So let's take the top layer, take the rectangle tool, and this time we're going to create a mask around the text. So I'm going to start by covering all of the text. And I'm going to change this mask. At the moment it's choosing what we can see, not what we can't. I want to change it so that this box cuts stuff out rather than includes it. So to do that, I'm going to change the mask that's shown up here from add to subtract. Now when I take this mask away, you can see the stuff. When the mask is there, you can't see it. And what we're going to do is change the shape of this ever so slightly, so that because what we're going to do, I'm just double clicking, because we're going to move this across like this to reveal the text. And I want it to mimic the logo from the other site. So that goes across the screen in this diagonal fashion like this. So I'm making this wipe in a diagonal fashion as well. So now that we have the basic shape of the mask, we need to animate it. So this is completely covered. Actually, I don't want it completely covered, because as I said earlier, I want to be able to read some of it immediately before the rest of the word wipes on. I'm going to create a keyframe for this. So I'm going to go down to the mask, drop down, and keyframe the mask path. Now that is set a keyframe at the beginning. I'm going to move forward a few frames and drag the whole mask across. Now we can play that back and see how it works. And it works. And what I'm now going to do is just feather the edge a bit so that it's not a harsh line here. All I'm going to do is select mask feather, and I think 3 pixels. Let's try 5 pixels. Bit better. If I did any more, if I do 10, which would look nice, I might start to get some, because it feathers every single edge, I might start seeing text creep in. Here we go, yeah, there, you can see a tiny dot. So what I'm going to do is shift this whole mask, double click, and then left arrow, just shift it a couple of pixels. Okay. So that is our wipe. Now I'm going to do it for the bottom one. So exactly the same. I'll start from scratch for this guy. So rectangle tool, select everything that you want to see, and we're going to change that now so that we can't see it, so change it from add to subtract. And let's make it so that it holds the same shape, the diagonal there. Make it feathered. What we're on 10 pixels. Let's try that again. And now we're going to keyframe it. So the mask path, push the stopwatch, drag it out, and I'm going to match this. Actually, I'm going to go a bit further and hope that the speed of the reveal is roughly the same. Alright, let's have a look. Now I want this to start a bit after the first one starts. So I'm just going to drag it a few frames. And you can see how just having one word on when we start allows you to read everything at the same speed as if it was all on screen at once. Cool. Just to make this a little more interesting, this black box is quite plain. So I'm going to change it and just slant this edge here a bit. So I'm going to go into my shape layer, find the rectangle that I made, which is this. Drop down on that, find the path. And at the moment it creates a rectangle which works exactly as a rectangle in the fact that you set the exact scale and size of the rectangle, right? And it works in unison. So this is great if you've got loads of these and you want to animate one and affect loads. But right now we just want to create a path. So what I'm going to do is right click rectangle path. I'm going to convert this to a path. Now what this has done is got rid of some of the attributes of the fact that it's a rectangle, but it does mean that you can change the qualities, the attributes of it exactly as you would the masks that we have on the text. You can just drag each let's find the path, click on the path. You can drag each corner to look however you want it. Each point, I should say. So let's try something like that. And do you know what? I'm going to shrink this text. The main text even more. Let's drop it down. And the bottom text isn't too bad, to be honest. That's better. Move this up. And the mask and everything should move with it because the mask is attached to the text. And this is starting to look a bit better. Let's select the path. Shrink this to fit. Undo that. Okay, maybe this would look good with a stroke. Let's have a look and decide. Maybe it had like 1 pixel around it. What's that, 3 pixels? I don't know, what do you think? Better with the outline? You just set it apart. So let's watch it back with 0. Yeah, I think this is working quite nicely. I think for something as simple as we have it, this works. Of course, we could do any number of things. One thing which might be quite nice is to fill this with a little grade. So it's not just solid black, it fades to white, and that'll just give it a bit more sort of polished look. The way I would do that is, if it will let me, so what we could do is this actually. If I do right click and do gradient overlay, we can choose a way of giving this a nice little gradient. And let's change the angle. So it's going left to right. And let's reverse it so that the white is on the right, but the white is too bright. So let's change the white to a grey. Cool, something like that. Just gives it a little, just makes it a little classier, I guess. But of course this has got rid of our stroke, so if we did still want the stroke, what we could do is get rid of that, the original stroke, because it's putting an effect over the entire layer, including the stroke, and basically every pixel that exists. It's putting this, a blending option puts an effect on top of those pixels. So we want to get rid of the stroke that was already there, because it's going to put the effect on top of the stroke, and then we can add a different stroke in the blending options. So if we go to layer styles and then stroke, it automatically gives us a red stroke, and we can change that down here to white. And what was it on, 2 pixels? Does that look better with or without stroke? I'm going to leave the stroke on. Let's try it with the color of the Mandalorian logo. So I'm going to bring that asset in. So import, where my assets? So drag that into footage. So now that we have this screen here, if we get the screen for the composition, and now we can, so we've got the stroke here. Let's see if it works in yellow. Possibly. Maybe it's better in white and the text in yellow. Let's try that. So grab the text. Where is my character palette? Here we go. Grab the eyedropper. Let's pull it from this text here. Missed it. Is it legible? It's not really thick enough. What about just this one? Just Pedro. So I've taken the white, but that is pure white. What about something in here? I mean, it works. Let's try changing the green, sorry, the grey. Let's try changing this grey to a colour from the Mandalorian palette. So, where are we? Gradient, edit, gradient, change that, let's get the picker. I think this is going to work a lot better than changing the font. I just wanted it to fit a bit better with the branding. Yeah, something along that colour I think works quite well. I'm just going to darken that a bit. Just playing with the colour. Cool. Well, I think that looks better than the grey. I don't know. Actually, they're both equally good. But hey, we have done that now. So let's watch it back with number pad 0. So that was really straightforward. It's essentially, you don't have to be as elaborate as I have. All we've animated, we've got a keyframe here, and a keyframe here, animating this mask to reveal the text. And we've done exactly the same here. 2 keyframes, 4 keyframes in total. That is it. And you could have something simple. You don't have to have this gradient. You could just have a black box. Don't have to have the stroke. Do you know what I mean? It could be super simple, but just that little animation just makes it feel a little more elegant in the edit. Now that we have this, let's tidy up this project. So I'm going to select all of these layers. Then I'm going to hit U. So I'm going to hit the down arrow. U exposes the keyframes that we have. So let's shrink that. That's gone. I don't need the footage anymore. It was very useful to get the colour, granted. So glad I brought that in. Saving. And now we need to copy this across for the other names. So let's go back into Premiere. Select this, right click, replace it with After Effects. Wait for it to do its thing, go back to Premiere, undo. I didn't chop off the footage, so or include the footage even. So let's see how we do. We don't need this pre-composition. In fact, if I remember correctly, we changed the sizing of the font completely. So let's bring in everything we made here, except the footage. Whoops. All of this, I copy it, go over to the new composition, paste it, and then work with it from there. Let's give this a proper name. So, given that this is, I'm going to copy the name of Pedro's composition, paste it here, rename it Deborah, put that into compositions, and I'm going to delete this, so I need to get her name right. Rather than copy pasting, if I copy paste this text that's already there, it's going to paste it in exactly the same size, exactly the same format. Now we've changed the size slightly, so I'm going to instead just change the text in the stuff we've already made. Deborah Chow, director, episodes 3 and 7. Cool, but we need it on the other side. Now we can delete this. We don't need it. Bye. Cool. Okay, let's flip this whole thing. So I'm also going to throw this over here because I don't need it at the moment. So what's the best way of doing this? There's quite a few ways that you can do this actually. You could just scale it. So if I hit S, do scale, unlock the linking to the X and Y axis are separate. And then if I change the X axis, left to right, to be minus, then flipped. It's exactly the same position as long as your anchor point is bam smack in the center, which, because I haven't moved it, it is. Another way of doing that, if I undo those and I go into, let's minimize that. If I go into effects and then flip, we have flip, so we can throw that on there and it will do exactly the same thing. We just have to make sure it's on the right, flips on the right axis, and we don't want it on height, we want it on width. So there you go. Now the text needs to be left aligned, so let's go into paragraph, left, and then bring it across. We're going to need to see our title safety so that we are in the right ballpark. And hopefully that's it. Nope. Of course, because we have now left aligned footage, and different lengths, different durations of text, the masks don't work as they would. So I'm going to hit the U button. That's going to reveal all of my keyframes in this composition. So where do I want these? So I'm going to select these keyframes, this mask. Start with the top one first. So the starting position covers the whole thing and it finishes without covering the whole thing. So I'm going to go to the finishing point here and I'm going to move everything across, hold down shift so there's no up and down. If I hold down shift, then I know it's correct on the X axis. And the start point now, I'm going to drag this across so that we can read her first name. Cool. Now if we play that back, it works. Although it's slower than it was in the last one because her surname is shorter. So I'm going to move this keyframe closer to the other one, and that will make the animation from here to here quicker. Better. Okay, so now the bottom one. I'm going to start with the first keyframe. select it all, and I'm going to bring it so it just covers the first letter. That way I know that as soon as the keyframe starts, it actually reveals the letter rather than there being a delay. Even though you can't see the text here, if I started it here, there's a few frames before we even get to see the text. So I want the mask to start where the beginning of the sentence is. And then the end transition, let's hold down Shift and move across. And now because this is a shorter word than the last one, we need to move this closer. Cool. That is looking good. I might just bring this slightly in towards the center. So because we are reflected at the moment, which is why this isn't always such the best way to do it, it's a lot easier to do it just by altering the scale in here. I have to shift it the opposite way. And actually, do you know what I've noticed is the gradient is going the opposite way as well. So let's flip the gradient so that we have the gold on the outside of the screen, because on this one we have it on the outside of the screen. So I'm going to go down into to find this effect, which is in layer styles, gradient overlay, find the gradient, and there should be a reverse, and if we click that, then it's going to flip it to the opposite of what it currently is, and that works. Let's compare it to the other one. Yep. Cool. Simple. Save that. Go to the project window because we're about to bring in the next one. Select it, right click, replace with After Effects. I'm going to copy this, copy, and then change the name of this to say Dave. Drag it in here, and Dave is on the left. So I'm going to copy all of Deborah's stuff, paste it in, and this I can move out of the way so I can copy it. Dave Filoni. Let's drag the playhead forward so that it's not, the mask's not covering any of the words. Dave Filoni, executive producer / director, episodes 1 and 5. Okay. So let's delete this, don't need this anymore. And make sure we can see all of this text. So if I hit U, reveal the keyframe, have the end keyframe out here. And I'm going to drag that keyframe out a little bit. And then these, the start keyframe I'm going to drag just so we can read Dave and only Dave. And now we just need the shape to fill. So let's see if we have enough room to nudge it. Not quite. I want it out here. So let's change the shape. Contents, rectangle, path. You could alternatively just double click. And I don't want to stretch it, because what that's going to do is change the angle of this line here. All I want to do is move this end out. So I'm going to just select the 2 points and then shift move them across. And hopefully if I push 0, that's given us what we want. Save. And let's undo in here so that we don't have the dynamic linking. Okay, let's do one for this guy. I guess it's good for you guys because you can see exactly what I'm doing over and over again, and you can make sure that you've got it perfectly right. So we need a text in the bottom right, which I believe Pedro has. Let's select those 3 things. Copy them, paste them, get this out of the way, rename this, so copy, paste, Carl, put that down, rename, I'm going to move the playhead along so I can see what I'm writing, rename Pedro to say Carl Weathers. Another way, instead of writing all of this out, another way you can copy this information across. If I go into this comp, select the text, whenever I copy I always hit several times because I've always been caught out where it hasn't actually copied. If I go into text edit and create a new document, there we go, and convert this to plain text. If I paste that in, now it's plain text. If I select all, copy it, and go back into here, I can paste it and it adopts the styling of what it is in there rather than where it came from, this one. Just because it's plain text and doesn't carry with it all the styling. Now we can delete this. Yes. And just looking. Yeah. Not really much needs to happen there. I'm going to slide this sooner. And where we have this key point, I'm going to drag it just across. Cool. That'll do for that. Undo so that we don't have the dynamic link from there. And then the last one, bring him in, copy the name of this comp, Werner, throw it in here. We need bottom left, so this, copy, paste, move that where I can see it, Banner. Top. Client. And now we can delete this. We don't need it. How are those masks working? Let's have it so we can see his whole name at the beginning. Just move that across. And then I'm going to delay the word client coming in. Just a touch. Cool. There we have it. Now that we have those, we need to get them into Premiere. Best way to get these things into Premiere, first I need to make sure there's no background footage. No, because we want these to have an alpha, so there's nothing behind them. And I can see there is nothing in any of these. So I'm going to add these to Adobe Media Encoder. Just here. That is going to load up. It always takes forever. So while that is loading, go back to Premiere, undo that. And we just have the end title to do now. So what I'm going to do is bring this into After Effects. And we're going to do something very similar to what we just did. So replace with After Effects Comp. Now that's brought the logo in, and we're going to call this Logo Reveal year 1. If it'll let us, I'll go back to that in a second. Go into there. I'm going to create a new folder called Assets, and that is where I'm going to keep my images. And I keep all sorts in assets. I might have things like Photoshop documents or Adobe Illustrator, things like that. Okay, so before we carry on with this, I'm going to go back into Encoder and get these rendering out. So we want these with as a QuickTime, we want them high res, and we want them with an alpha. So I have a preset already, but I'm going to do it from scratch so that you guys can see the settings. So I have this preset here, Apple ProRes 4444 with alpha. So to get these to the right settings, okay, we need to go down, make sure it's on QuickTime, which obviously we did before. Go down to the drop down for video codec and make sure it's 4444. None of the other ProRes options will allow you to have an alpha. For the size, we want to match source. Pretty much everything we want to match source, but this is where we put in the alpha. So where we have a depth, if we do the drop down, we have 8 bytes, 8 bits plus alpha. Now we don't have enough, we're not working with super high res raw footage, so we don't need 16 bits. We just need 8 bits, and let's do it with an alpha. And that is all of the settings you need. That's it, pretty much. I'm going to turn it off the audio because this doesn't have audio. And hit OK. And now I'm going to change the destination for these to go into. So I'm going to put these in the project folder. These are going to go into renders. new folder from After Effects, and I always do it by date as well, 2020 0609, year, month, day. That way it always goes into the correct order. And hit play, and hopefully those should run in the background. Now we can jump onto this. Because the logo's got a black frame, and so has the composition, I'm going to turn on the transparency so we can see what's going on. Now we want to cut out the black, and there are a few ways that we can do this. I actually think for this still, I'm going to show you a way in After Effects, but it's not going to be successful, and it's going to take a while, and it'd be useful if this was animated. I'd go to Effect and go to Keying, and I want to key out that black. So I would go to Linear Color Key. Now the two main the two main effects that you use for keying in After Effects that come standard would be Key Light. Key Light's very good for green screen, and Linear Color Key, this is good for literally just cutting stuff out. And Key Light, if you've got a well-lit green screen, is great because it'll pick out all the green. And now Linear Color Key is great if you've got stuff that's a solid color, and it could be a green screen or a blue screen, but it has to be a very stark difference between the two colors. For example, a green background, if you had, for example, a product which had some shade, some similar shades in it, could be similar, completely similar, of blue, or for example, I've tried to separate a brown and skin, and it just doesn't work in Linear Color Key. This is specifically for stuff that's like solid blocks of color like this black. I find it's good for illustrations and things like that. So you can see I've picked out the black. What it's done is picked out all the black in this bit down here, and you can try and play around with the softness to see if it works. And you're getting pretty close there. And the tolerance. Now let's take a look at that and see how that is. So down here we can see, right now we're looking at an RGB image, which is the final image. But if we want to see like what's the alpha of this, because I can't see from this point if that little bit of white there is the background behind or is the white of the actual image. So if I go to alpha, I can see the alpha. That's just black and white, and you can see that it's not picking up this here. But do you know what? It's what I didn't think it would do. It's managed to keep all of the stuff inside of the N, and it's only this bit here in the A that isn't working. And that's actually really impressive. I did not expect to see it that good. I expected to pick out all of this in here and delete all of this information, but it hasn't. Now we could, now that we have this, to fill in these holes here, we could duplicate this, get rid of the Linear Color Key, and just essentially create, just cut this out and just have this. So if we get the pen tool and just draw what we want to keep, now that sits on top of the one that's cut out. And it's not too bad, you know, if everything stayed at this scale, especially if it had a black background, you really can't tell. Looks fine. And if I wanted to pull in the logo, we can see exactly what it's going to look like with this, my bad, as I say, with the stars underneath, but of course that's not stars. I meant these stars. We still have the pre-comp in here, so we can actually see ourselves how it looks with those stars. And it actually looks absolutely fine. In my opinion, that looks pretty good. You can't tell about the crappiness around the edge, but if we go back into After Effects and turn on transparency, we can see that all along the edge here, it's all anti-alias and a bit crappy. I'm going to keep it as is because it works and it was quick, and it doesn't have to be perfect because it looks fine. Now, if this was on a white background or something else, then what I would do is bring this still into Photoshop, and I would cut out, I would select all the black with the Magic Wand tool, and then delete it. I think it would probably do a better job than this. Alternatively, if you need it super crisp and nice, then Photoshop would give you that option. You'd probably have to trace around these letters, and then you could do a selection with these colors in the Star Wars logo to separate it from the black. But we don't need to do that because we found a super quick and easy way to fix it. So now that we have the logo cut out, let's add a wipe so that it comes on. And to do that, what I'm going to do is create a mask around this logo that cuts it out. So I'm going to, right now these are 2 layers. Whoops. I want this to be 1 layer. So I'm going to pre-comp this so that it's just like nesting in Premiere. I'm going to pre-comp it just so it's one thing. So right click and pre-compose. I always use a shortcut which is Command Shift C, and I'm just going to call this Mandalorian logo. Pre-comp. Cool. And this is the pre-comp here. Close that, and I'm going to make sure I move this pre-comp here into a folder within my compositions folder called pre-comps. Drag that down there. And I'll probably stick a little, I don't know, a tilde or something at the beginning so that it stays at the top. Okay. And now we can treat this as 1 layer and do exactly what we did with the text and have a mask reveal the whole logo. So let's get a rectangle mask over the whole thing. Drag it over, hit the V button and select this corner here, and we want it to it'd be a similar shape to the curtain. Now that we have this mask, we want it to do the opposite. So what is inside we want to not see. So change the mask to subtract, and now we can just animate this mask. Click on the drop down mask path, put keyframe there, and then move it, I don't know, here, for us to see the full thing. And now if we, and that obviously automatically creates the keyframe there. And if we go over it, because I don't want this crisp clean line here, I'm going to add a feather. I want it to be a lot thicker, so let's go with 30 pixels. See how that feels. Do you know what, let's go higher, 60. And then you've got a very simple wipe. That feels quite Star Warsy actually, from the original films. Anyway, I think if I throw on the black background again, it kind of works. It's not as elaborate as the original one, and yes, I could recreate that, but it would take us a lot longer than just the time that we have right now. So I like this. I think we should just do this. What I'm going to do quickly though, just to make this feel a bit nicer, a bit smoother, if I right click this and go to Easy Ease Out, what it's going to do is it's going to change the speed at which it moves from this point to this point, and it's going to make this start slow and then get gradually faster. So watch this. So it changes completely, just kind of makes it a bit smoother. I could do the same here, right click, Easy Ease In, because we're coming into the key point. Watch that back. Yeah, but it makes it kind of finite, it finishes here, but I actually like the idea of it sort of dragging off into infinity past that. So let's just render this out. I'm going to go to the same place. Wait for it to come in. Or not. So while that takes its time, let's go back into Premiere. Pull in, okay, we can get rid of that. Undo, get rid of the pre-comp. And let's pull in all of the titles that we just made. So I'm going to make a new folder called Renders. And in there I put everything that comes from After Effects, that comes from the grade as well. So I'm going to add a folder called After Effects. And I'm going to save. And let's import those renders from After Effects. Okay. Let's see if Media Encoder has picked up our After Effects file. No, it hasn't. Send it over there again. 2 will show up there in a minute. It does take a time. It does take a while for After Effects to sort of plug into a Media Encoder. That's because it's Media Encoder's pulling everything from After Effects, every single little piece of information, sort of recreating it. Whereas with Premiere, Media Encoder just kind of like pulls in the timeline, and it references the footage that's already there. But After Effects is a different beast. Animations are sort of creating something from nothing, whereas editing, you're just referencing time codes for something that already exists. So let's bring in all of these. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to duplicate this sequence. Pull these in one by one. Deborah, Dave, Carl, Werner Herzog. Cool. And throw those down to delete everything underneath. And hopefully that looks bloody lovely. Let's watch it back.
Iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
Who's been following a way of life and has that way of life upended by the introduction of the baby.
This little being is suddenly helping him and then challenging him.
The show, to me, in the most basic storyline, is about a man discovering something about himself that he had never known.
And realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
He's relatable. We're all kind of...
Cool, they work.
Looking back where it has been and where it should be.
Maybe Werner Herzog's thing shouldn't be as long out here. It's kind of a bit of dead empty space here. Let's redo that guy. Duplicate that. Now After Effects automatically renames. If there's a number at the end of the comp name, then it automatically increases it by 1, which is such a massive time saver. I actually wish Premiere did the same. And let's shrink it. Cool. Add that. It's taking a sweet ass time. Okay, do you know what? We'll do it in After Effects then, and I can show you the settings in here. So the settings, again, I have a preset here, and looking at pretty much the same things. So if we click on lossless, then we choose the format, QuickTime, format options. We don't want animation codec, even though that offers us alpha abilities. We want ProRes 4444, and then you change it here, channels, RGB plus alpha, and that's where we get our alpha channel in. Output, we're going to go into, where's it gone, renders, save, and then let's get the logo reveal in there as well. At the render queue, and because I've saved those settings, I am going to click shortcut, pull them into here, great, and render. Now we can pull this in, so this is the new one we need, and logo reveal. To replace stuff in Premiere that is exactly the same duration, everything else is exactly the same, it's just an iteration, then if you highlight it, actually I don't even think you need to highlight it, but just drag the footage you want it to replace it with, hold down the Alt key and drop it on top, and it's going to replace it completely. If I hit undo, you can see redo. You can see what's done, undo, redo. And yeah, if I did that with something else, dragged it over, Alt drop, it's going to drag it in from the beginning because the time codes don't match. It's going to drag it in from the beginning of the footage that I just dropped in. Right. And the logo reveal at the end. Let's throw that down here. And then delete what's underneath. Hopefully, that's nice. Let's watch that.
Filmmaking back where it should be.
Excellent. I like where it's gone. Let's watch the whole thing now with all of the After Effects we just added on. Now, I like to keep all of the titles on the same track, so I'm just going to move these up one. Okay. Let's watch it from the top.
The Mandalorian is your iconically cool, flawed, mysterious loner.
Who's been following a way of life and has that way of life upended by the introduction of the baby.
This little being is suddenly helping him and then challenging him.
The show, to me, in the most basic storyline, is about a man discovering something about himself that he had never known.
And realizing that the search wasn't out there, the search was in here.
He's relatable. We're all kind of covered in our own armor, you know, and terrified of taking that armor off.
I think Star Wars is such a part of people's lives.
It was beyond being groundbreaking, Star Wars was. It was pretty phenomenal. Not only what it was at the time, but what it has become.
This new technology brings filmmaking back where it has been and where it should be. This is fantastic. Filmmaking back where it should be.
Cool. That looks pretty solid. Now, our call to action is this thing at the end. It's also known as a CTA. It's written down, call to action. It's just telling everyone to go to Disney+. This is, I'm surprised there's not a website URL or something at the end, but I guess Disney is Disney, so they just expect people to either go straight onto Google and type in Disney+, or know exactly where the website is or what the URL is. That, to me, looks pretty damn finished. So I'm just going to say once again that I have put this project, this Premiere Pro project, up for you to take. You can download it, see exactly how I've worked, and pull it apart, see all the different stages. I'll put this version up, and if you're interested, I'll put the After Effects file up as well. Let me know in the comments if you want to get the After Effects file as well, and all you have to do is just go down into the description. There is a link, and the link also takes you through the entire series of these live streams where I created this from scratch. You can see it all there and get all of the assets all in one place. So click through there and you'll find everything that you need to follow along and do exactly as I have done. If this has been good and you found it useful, hit the subscribe button. I'd love to let you know when I've got some more of these. If there's enough traction, I'll do some more live streams. I've got more content coming out as well, which covers lots of editing hints, tricks and techniques that I've learned over the last 13 odd years as a professional. So subscribe and you'll be the first to find out when those come out. Thank you for joining me. I hope you're as happy with the final output as I am. I think it looks pretty good actually. I had no idea what it was going to look like at the beginning, and I hadn't even taken a look at the footage. I'm pretty happy with where it is. If you don't recall, the brief at the beginning was to tell the story of the Mandalorian, but make it obvious, sort of flip it so that it became an internal journey. rather than a sort of a bounty hunt, and throw in something for the fans and wrap it up by saying that this series is like nothing that's ever been done before. And I think we've achieved that pretty well. There are quite a lot of choices to be made in terms of content and the direction that we could have gone with the different with what was said in the interviews. We could have said so many different things and gone so many different ways and created loads of different durations of edits as well. I really like what we've got here. It's short, it's snappy, it tells a nice story as well. Hopefully, if there's any Star Wars fans among you, you feel like I've done it justice. If you created your own edit, throw it in the comments. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see what you guys have made with the same stuff. If you have any questions, let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you guys, and I will see you soon. Cheers.